Perez slams Red Bull. Sergio Perez was understandably annoyed on Saturday at the Australian GP qualifiers when his car ran into issues which were present all the way from FP3 as he exited Q1 and started from the back of the grid. The Mexican again bashed his team about it, saying problems like this hinder his attack on the title against his teammate Verstappen. So, with that in mind, what was the problem for Perez, and do Red Bull have a real issue on their hands? One that may jeopardize their title chances, with Mercedes now getting their act together. Join us till the end of the video to find out. The Australian Grand Prix was full of action, so if you live in Europe, it was worth getting up early to watch. Even though Max Verstappen's and Red Bull's early lead in the 2023 Formula 1 season made it likely that he would win again, mayhem at the end of the race threatened to throw off the otherwise stable standings. Sergio Perez had a terrible third practice and qualifying, ending up on the gravel beside the road a total of 4 times, and his car cancelling on him during Q1. This forced Checo to start from the back of the grid on the Sunday race, but that turned out to be of no problem for the fast Mexican, as he ended up P5 amongst all that chaos and eventually grabbed the fastest lap as well. Checo's 0 to hero Australian GP netted him the Driver of the Day vote as well, and more importantly proved once again that the RB19, when ready and without issues, can blaze through the rest of the grid very easily. However, Checo was unhappy with his performance due to the issues he was facing for the entirety of Friday and Saturday, and while he was reluctant to get into the specifics of what the problem was, Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko explained what the issue was, which we'll get to in a moment. It was really bad, very bad weekend. What happened on Saturday? It's totally unacceptable, said Perez to media after the race. We have to get to the bottom of it because I felt that we had a really good weekend up to yesterday, Saturday, Checo stated. He further elaborated that the issues that the team experienced set their confidence back despite having superior pace over the competition. We worked so hard preparing for the Grand Prix, and then that just put us back completely and we lost all the confidence, and then I think definitely we had the basic fight for the victory today, but finishing in P5 is damage limitation. The Red Bull advisor Helmut Marko believes that Sergio was not suffering from the same technical issues that plagued his free practice 3 session. Perez did believe that the same issues which he had during Friday's practice eventually ruined his qualifying session, but according to Marko, the more likely cause was the tricky low grip conditions of the Albert Park circuit. We had a problem with the engine braking in FP3, commented Marko to Service TV. Under braking, we didn't get the right adjustment. Because of that, Sergio was unsettled, there was understeer, there was a little push from the engine, but Perez's issue in qualifying wasn't like the practice sessions. At the beginning it was a bit slippery and unfortunately he slid out of it. Perez did manage to get himself out of that position and maybe pull out the maximum of it, so his spirits after the race were a bit higher, even though he complained for another thing after the race, which came off a bit surprising. Generally, it was a good result today. Yesterday, I obviously lost a bit of confidence with the car, but we made a lot of changes overnight, so that helped heading into the race. I had a really good restart the first time. I jumped 3 or 4 places, but then it was a bit of a mess with the DRS train. I was frustrated later in the race because I couldn't advance any further, but it was so difficult to get through the field with tyre deg low and everyone going on to the hard tyres quickly. Maybe if I'd been a bit more aggressive early on, I could have finished higher, but I'm happy we finished P5 and even managed to secure the fastest lap. That is without a doubt the blow to Perez's title chances against his teammate Verstappen, especially because the Dutch driver actually won the Grand Prix. But Perez's fastest lap at least gave him a point plus in the overall standings, so that's something good that can work in his favour at the end, considering how tight this season's title race could be. There were people who didn't think the RB19 was to blame for Perez's problems in Australia. The F1 journalist Peter Windsor thinks it was disingenuous for Sergio Perez to say that there was an issue with his Red Bull Formula 1 car when he failed to qualify for the Australian Grand Prix. He is bemused as to why Perez won Driver of the Day, because according to him, it wasn't so hard for Perez to finish where he did amidst all of that chaos during the race. On his YouTube channel, Windsor said that Perez was only able to come through the field and finish where he did because he had to start further back due to an issue with his car during qualifying. Perez had claimed that there was a problem with the car, specifically with the brakes locking up, but the team found no issues with the car and only changed the brake pads in Parc Fermé. Windsor believed that Perez was incorrect in his assessment of the car, but acknowledged that this was simply part of Perez's personality. Ultimately, Windsor felt that Perez should have been on the front row of the grid and that his performance in the race was not as impressive as it may have appeared. Another thing Perez was talking about after the race and sort of not being happy about was the apparent lack of visibility on the track. He said the end of afternoon low sun made for dangerous conditions in the final laps of the Australian Grand Prix. The event in Melbourne extended well past 3 hours in duration, with the 2 red flag incidents and multiple delays. The sun was therefore low on the horizon when the final restart took place. Cold tyres meant that grip was at a premium when the field barreled down towards turn 1, but Perez says he was especially impaired by a lack of visibility, which led to the Red Bull driver veering onto the grass at the start as the mayhem began. "I had to avoid Gasly," explained Perez, who was classified 5th at the end of the day after starting from the pit lane. "And then there was no visibility really going into turn 1. It was really dangerous. First of all the warm-up, but secondly we could not see anything. We cannot race in these conditions anymore. One day it's going to be a big shunt. We cannot see anything. The last 30 laps we are just a passenger. We don't have any visibility." Checo had the right to object to the visibility, but that's just nature as we can't control when the sun sets. The race was in a decent time, and in this situation, FIA's delays made it last for over 3 hours, which of course was not good for everyone on the grid. However, the Melbourne organisers have their work cut out for them for next season. After almost 3 years gone because of the COVID outbreak, the F1 field is back in Australia. This is still very exciting, even though many people would like Albert Park to be the first race of the season instead of the third race, as it has been the last 2 years. The Australian GP continues to be a good race. Off the circuit, there is work for the Australian Grand Prix Corporation to do. The AGPC had to send a representative to the stewards because of a track invasion after the checkered flag, which doesn't happen very often. On the cool-down lap, Hulkenberg's Haas stopped, which brought out the 4th red flag, and fans who had run onto the live circuit were able to reach the stuck VF23, even though a red light was on to warn of a possible electrical hazard. The AGPC admitted in front of the stewards that this was a violation of Article 12.2.1h of the International Sporting Code, and they promised to come up with a strategy to fix what went wrong, and will talk to F1, the FIA, and the Victorian Police to make sure it doesn't happen again. Perez has suffered a blow in the title race, but can he regain it back in the next one in Baku? We have a several-week rest now as the F1 caravan slowly moves to Europe, so what are your thoughts? Can Perez actually beat Max this season? Let us know in the comments below.